Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Actuary Podcast. I am your host, Brock Talby, the Fantasy Football Actuary. I want to thank you for joining me on this Saturday episode. Hopefully, your family has some fun plans this weekend. To give you a bit of insight, we are getting pretty close to the holidays, so my wife convinced me to put up our Christmas tree this week. Um, we started last night, it's going into today. So this is the first time we've had an artificial tree, and this is the first time we've had really high ceilings. We moved earlier in the year, so now we have 12-foot ceilings in the living room. We bought a 10.5-foot artificial tree, and it is huge. So it's a multi-day project. We've been going since last night. Hopefully we can get it done today. It's looking good. And it's getting me in the Christmas spirit. So this is earlier than we normally do. We usually wait until the day after Thanksgiving. But since we had the artificial tree this year, and we just kind of need some Christmas cheer this year, don't we? So it's going up. It's fun. We got the stockings hanging up. So get in the holiday spirit, everyone. I hope you guys have a fun weekend planned as well. So, as with every Saturday episode, we will start with the Thursday night throwback. And I think the two main things to take away from this Thursday night game are the Colts running back split, I guess, and the Tennessee offense. So, we'll start with the Colts running backs. After last week, it was the second week in a row, Jordan Wilkins had led the way. He had been taking more and more snaps away from Jonathan Taylor. It looks like the Colts have lost confidence in Jonathan Taylor. And then Thursday night comes and Nyheim Hines leads the way. He well outsnapped the other two. And it's just, I think it's going to be this way going forward the rest of the season. I don't know that you're going to be able to play any of them with confidence. You can surely take your shot on any one of them any given week. I know I ended up playing Nyheim Hines a couple weeks ago in some bye week situations. I think it was week 8. I had multiple running backs on bye, and I ended up plugging in Nyheim Hines, and that's the game he caught 2 touchdowns. So that worked out for me. But I don't think you're going to be able to guess or predict who to play on a weekly basis. If I had to put it now, it'd probably be Hines, Wilkins, and then Jonathan Taylor. So if you held on to Jonathan Taylor hoping that he would become something and looking at his great end of season schedule, I think you're going to be disappointed with Jonathan Taylor. I could be wrong, but I think Nyheim Hines is probably the guy that I would take my shot on, and he has the higher probability of having a good game. And then Jordan Wilkins seems to have the coach's confidence in the basic rushing game. Hines is obviously the pass catching back. And then Jonathan Taylor is just kind of left out by himself. So we'll see how it shakes out. That's the first interesting takeaway from the Thursday night game. The second one was the Tennessee offense. So the Colts had like 450 yards in the game, and Tennessee only had 250. The Colts just kind of dominated Tennessee. And it was a bad start to the fantasy football week for anybody playing Tennessee Titans, which was me. I had at least one Titan in all 3 of my leagues. My Dynasty League, I had Ryan Tannehill. That, not a good start. In my 10-team Standard League, I had A.J. Brown. He had 1 catch on the second play of the game for 21 yards. Great start. And then later in the first quarter, he proceeded to drop an easy 70-yard touchdown. Just bobbled it and dropped it. And then he disappeared the rest of the game. So he finished with 1 catch for 21 yards. And then in my 12-team Superflex League, I have A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. Obviously, A.J. Brown, the 2.1 points. And Derrick Henry did get over 100 yards, so it's not like he buried you this week, but Deonta Foreman got a touchdown. Jonnu Smith had a rushing touchdown. So seeing those touchdowns go to other people on the goal line was especially frustrating for Derrick Henry owners. Like I said, it's not like he buried you, but 11 points from your first round pick, who's supposed to be a top 5 running back. And this is a couple weeks in a row now where he hasn't gotten into the end zone, and he hasn't really helped you win. He hasn't lost you games, but he hasn't helped you win in the last couple weeks. So frustrating start for sure for anybody who played Tennessee Titans like I did. So let's continue forward in the episode with the NFL newsstand. So we'll start with the contractually obligated COVID news. The Browns had a player test positive Friday morning, but the game against the Texans is not expected to be in any danger. I haven't heard anything otherwise. We've had lots of teams test positive and have players pop up, and it hasn't really affected games. People have just gone on the COVID list. They've isolated close contacts and tested them, and if there's no negatives within or no positives within a certain amount of days, they can come back. So it seems like they have this protocol pretty well figured out by now. So I don't expect this to affect the game at all. Matt Nagy has given up play calling for the Bears to offensive coordinator Bill Lazor. So a couple weeks ago, some reporters asked Nagy if he would be willing to give up play calling. It's just painfully obvious that the Bears' offense is terrible. They've been kept in games by their defense, but whatever Nagy is trying to do is not working. Nick Foles is bad. The rushing game hasn't been able to get anything going. I think they were ranked 31st in the league going into last week. I doubt that improved with David Montgomery getting hurt and his really bad game last week. So, yeah, I think they needed a shakeup, and this might help Allen Robinson. It can't get any worse for sure. So, you're hoping that with Nagy relinquishing play calling duties, that your Bears fantasy players will start seeing improvements. Nick Chubb could be back from IR this week, and it will be up to team doctors to clear him before the game. We'll see what happens with Chubb. I think him coming back, if you're a Kareem Hunt owner, you shouldn't be worried. Hunt was actually better with Chubb on the field as the 1-2 duo. So you're hoping Chubb comes back as a Chubb owner and a Hunt owner, in my opinion. Another top running back, Christian McCaffrey, as we expected after last weekend, he is out this week with a shoulder injury. So he came back for one game and he got hurt again. It doesn't sound like it's too serious of an injury, and it should just hold him out for this week. But Mike Davis is back in people's lineups as a smash play. Devonta Freeman was placed on IR. This boosts Wayne Gallman's stock. I know I've been hesitant to recommend picking up Wayne Gallman, but with Devonta Freeman on IR, I think Wayne Gallman needs to be rostered in every league. Not necessarily started in every game, but in the right matchups, I think you can definitely play Wayne Gallman. He's going to get good volume. Richie James, the wide receiver breakout star for the 49ers last week, he has apparently earned a spot in the 49ers wide receiver rotation, according to Kyle Shanahan. And with Debo out, I think he's an interesting flex play, but expect him to be a really low second fiddle to Brandon Ayuk this week. Ayuk was out as a close contact with Kendrick Bourne on the COVID list, and I believe Bourne went back on the COVID list, and then he came back off yesterday or this morning. You might want to bet that. I am trying to remember. I'm pretty sure Bourne is back now, though, as well. So I'm not picking up Richie James and playing him right away. I think Ayuk is a good play. But with Nick Mullins and the running game being efficient, I don't think the passing game is going to have enough work to support Richie James and Brandon Ayuk and Kendrick Bourne if he plays. Ben Roethlisberger, he was placed on the COVID list earlier this week as a close contact, and he was activated off again this morning, so he is good to go for tomorrow's game against the Bengals. Anybody who had Roethlisberger or any offensive weapon in the Steelers' offense for fantasy should be happy with this news. We saw what the Steelers did last year with their backup quarterback and their third-string quarterback all season. So without Roethlisberger, this offense falls apart, I think. So this is good news. He does not have to miss a game. Jerick McKinnon is reportedly expected to get a lot of work this week. I guess his tired legs are a thing of the past. So last week, everyone was super high on JaMycal Hasty. I think I had him ranked as like a top 24 running back. So I had him as a low RB2 going against the Packers' terrible run defense. And then out of nowhere, Jerick McKinnon just got a bunch of work, and Hasty only had like 4 touches. So apparently McKinnon's tired legs are better, and he is the running back I would start for the 49ers. We'll go over some injury updates quick. Chris Carson is questionable again this week. If he is out, I think DJ Dallas stays the same type of play that he's been the last couple of weeks. If he gets in the end zone, you're going to be happy. Otherwise, he's going to have a fairly inefficient day and low yardage. Travis Homer did get more involved in the second half last week, so I'm not saying that DJ Dallas is a super good play by any means if Chris Carson is out, but it's the same kind of low ceiling play that he was last week and the week before. If he gets a touchdown, it'll be a good week. Deebo Samuel is out for week 10, like I mentioned, And Tevin Coleman is also out for the 49ers. So, yep, Brandon Ayuk, Jerick McKinnon, those are the guys I would play. David Montgomery remains sidelined at Friday's practice, and he's still in the concussion protocol. So if he is out, it I don't know who will lead the backfield there. Cordero Patterson has been the change of pace back for Montgomery. I think they have a guy named Nick Knoll or something like that. So either way, the Bears offense has been terrible. So if Montgomery's out, I'm not playing a running back from the Bears. If Montgomery's in, I guess you can play Montgomery still. He gets a good amount of carries, but their offense has been so bad that I wouldn't want to play Montgomery either. David Johnson is out with a concussion. Like I said in Tuesday's episode, I have David Johnson in multiple leagues, and he crushed me last week. I was able to overcome his early exit in my Superflex league, but not my 10-team standard. I was able to get Duke Johnson in both of those leagues, so Duke Johnson is in my lineup in place of David Johnson this week. Mark Ingram is questionable. He's the presumed starter for the Ravens, but he has been the worst looking running back. If he comes back, I think this just makes Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins basically unplayable. We saw how the splits worked when it was a three-headed monster, and I didn't want to play any of them. So I would stay away if Mark Ingram is back. If he's not, Gus Edwards is a touchdown-dependent play, and Dobbins is a big play-dependent play. So take your shot, but if Ingram's back, don't take your shot. Miles Sanders practiced fully Friday and should be good to go this week. This is terrible news for me because in my 10-team standard league, I am playing the guy who has Dalvin Cook and Miles Sanders. So with Miles Sanders back, he's projected to be the highest scorer by like 20 points this week. And I fully expect to get buried by Dalvin Cook and Miles Sanders. Jerry Jeudy is questionable. He's coming off that big game last weekend. He is expected to play. So if he's in, I would play him. He had 14 targets last week. That kind of volume is fantastic. So if he's in, and it sounds like he's expected to be, I would play him. Don't worry about the injury. TJ Hawkinson, this sucks. He is questionable for the game. He popped up on Thursday's injury report after practicing fully on Wednesday with a toe injury. I have Hawkinson as my tight end in my Dynasty League. He is the tight end 2 on the season, so he's been fantastic. If he sits out, it's going to mess up a lot of people who have had that tight end that they can count on, and they're going to have to wade into the waters of streaming a tight end and see that that is not the place you want to be. So hopefully Hawkinson can play. It doesn't seem like a serious injury. He did return to practice on a limited basis on Friday, so we'll just have to monitor that. Hopefully he ends up playing. Elsewhere around the Lions, Kenny Golladay has already been ruled out for Week 10. Yeah, Kenny Golladay had a lot of high hopes for the season. He's out with a hip injury again. He's missed too many games this year, and it's definitely hurt Matthew Stafford. Kenyon Drake and Allen Lazard are both game time decisions. If Drake plays, I think I still prefer Chase Edmonds with Drake coming back off the injury, but Edmonds isn't going to get the volume of work that he got last week, but he wasn't super efficient with that volume. Maybe he works better as a change of pace guy with 8 to 10 touches, and he can come in and break off that big play. Allen Lazard, if he is active, I think I'm going to play him over Justin Jefferson in my 12-team Superflex League. Justin Jefferson has been great, and he is a fantastic player, but the Vikings are just leaning on Dalvin Cook. Kirk Cousins throws like 12 to 15 times a game. That's not enough volume to support Jefferson and Thielen. And against the Bears' anemic offense, I don't think they're going to need to throw. I think Dalvin Cook's just going to get them out to a lead with rushing, and they won't need Thielen or Jefferson or Kirk Cousins. So if Allen Lazard's playing against the Jaguars, I think I'm putting him in my lineup over Justin Jefferson. So take that for what it's worth. If you needed the push to play Allen Lazard fresh off the injury, at least you know someone else is doing it as well. Justin Jackson is out for the Chargers, which we will talk about a little bit later in the Fringe Player Frenzy section. Joe Mixon is doubtful, so it sounds like he's not going to play. Gio becomes a flex play again. It is against the Steelers, so temper your expectations, but he's been serviceable the last couple weeks with Joe Mixon out, so If you have Gio and you held on to him, he's probably a decent flex play, but again, it is against the Steelers defense. And finally, Laviska Shenault is out for the Jaguars. Interesting to note that the Green Bay top corner, who was presumably expected to shadow DJ Chark, is doubtful with a concussion. So DJ Chark should be a good play with Jake Luton. And with Laviska Shenault out, Keelan Cole becomes an interesting flyer. I wouldn't bank on Keelan Cole being that great, but I think DJ Chark is actually a good play with the Green Bay top corner out now. So we'll move into our final Saturday episode segment. It is Fringe Player Frenzy. So if you're new to the podcast, this is where I go over one quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end that is probably on the fringe of should I start him, should I bench him? I have other guys on my roster. Do I really want to go with this guy? And I talk about some of those players and my top choice at each position and why I would start them going into this week. So my fringe play at quarterback is Joe Burrow. You may be hesitant to play him against the Steelers, and a lot of rankings I've seen have him buried like in the 20s, but my model likes him as a fringe top 10 play this week. I think he's ranked right at quarterback 10 in both 4-point and 6-point quarterback formats, if I am remembering correctly. He's thrown for multiple scores or over 300 yards in all but 2 games this season, which is just insane as a rookie. And he's averaging about 20 rushing yards per game, and he has 3 different rushing touchdowns on the season. So he's been great, and I wouldn't let the matchup against the Steelers scare me off of streaming him or playing him over other fringe quarterbacks. I think he's just been so good that he's kind of earned a little bit of trust, and just because it's against the Steelers, I wouldn't bench him just based on the matchup. I would keep him in my lineup based on how good he's been. So I would start him over Drew Lock, Carson Wentz, and Baker Mayfield this week. My fringe play at running back, and this is a gamble. I have seen him ranked really low, but with Justin Jackson out, my fringe play at running back is Kalen Ballage. So it is painfully obvious that the Chargers do not trust Joshua Kelly, and they gave Ballage 17 touches last week when Jackson went down. Jackson went down like the first play of the game, rather than rolling out their rookie Joshua Kelly, who had a couple decent games to start the year, but has been pretty bad since, and he actually fumbled again last week. Instead of rolling him out there as the lead back, they went to Kalen Ballage, who they just like picked up. I didn't even know he was on the Chargers until I saw his name on the back of his jersey pop up, and he's rushing in a touchdown. So Kalen Ballage, I think he is a solid play. Like I said, 17 touches. That kind of volume just makes you a running back flex play automatically. And my models are projecting Ballage to lead the way again in a good matchup against the Dolphins. So I think he's going to outtouch Joshua Kelly. I think he's going to be the play that you want at running back from the Chargers. I would start Ballage over Wayne Gallman, J.D. McKissick, and J.K. Dobbins this week. My fringe play at wide receiver probably shouldn't be a fringe play, but I have seen him ranked kind of low in other expert rankings. It is Travis Fulgham. So, like I said, I don't think this should be a question, but he's been kind of faded by some experts, and I think it is because of the return of Jalen Reagor. So he's the clear number one. I think Fulgham is the clear number one in Philly, and the return of Reagor doesn't really change that for me. I know Reagor got the TD last game, but that came directly after a play where Carson Wentz threw a long pass to Fulgham, and he was so close to getting a touchdown, he got dragged down at the 1, and then the short touchdown pass just happened to go to Reagor. So, which made him have a decent fantasy game his first game back from injury, but Fulgham led the way with catches and yards. He just didn't get the touchdown. He got dragged down at the 1. So, my models are projecting Fulgham to be a safe volume play in a favorable matchup with the Giants, and I would not fade him just because the rookie Reagor is back. I'm starting Fulgham over Allen Robinson, Robbie Anderson, and Juju Smith-Schuster. And to wrap things up, my fringe play at tight end is Evan Engram. He has at least 5 catches and 45 yards in each of the last 3 games, and he finally caught a touchdown last week. Those numbers are good enough to catapult you to the top of the tight end rankings on a weekly basis. So it's been super rough out there, which is part of the reason my models like Engram as a top 5 tight end this week. If you have Kelsey on bye, you could look to your waivers. and pick up Engram and play him with mildly higher confidence than you would other tight ends. Um, like I said, it's been super rough for tight ends. If you don't score a touchdown, you're not a top play. If you score a touchdown, suddenly you're a top 5 play of the week. So I would play Engram over Noah Fant, Jared Cook, and Mark Andrews this week. Ugh, that pains me, but my models do not like Mark Andrews, and he has not been performing. So with that, let's just recap the fringe players quick. My quarterback play is Joe Burrow. My running back play is Kalen Ballage. My wide receiver play is Travis Fulgham. And my tight end play is Evan Engram. If you want to check out the Week 10 rankings for players outside of anybody that I mentioned on the podcast today, you can do that. The website is thefantasyfootballactuary.com. If you want to watch a video version of this podcast for this episode or any future episodes, the YouTube channel is The Fantasy Football Actuary. And if you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter and Instagram handle are the same. It is at the FF Actuary. So that will wrap up today's Saturday episode. Hopefully you have a fun weekend planned, a relaxing weekend planned, and enjoy tomorrow's games. And until next time, keep crunching those numbers.